Welcome to another edition of the R Smash Brothers AMA, brought to you by the Daily Dot. I, of course, am your host, Ian J. Barker, and with me, as always, is Jared Left Guy Win. Jared, how are you this evening?
I'm just so happy to join you here, Ian. I can't really say how happy I am. In fact, it's impossible, so I won't even try.
You could try.
No, I just can't say. I can't say it.
Someone might appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here, Ian.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I asked for. But of course, you're not here to hear us talk and compliment each other and talk about how great it is to be around me. You're here to talk about Silent Wolf and have him answer your questions. Silent Wolf joins us this beautiful Thursday from Austin, Texas. He's actually coming from Washington. Silent Wolf, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Well, technically over here it's not the evening yet, but still doing great.
That Pacific time always throws me off. I swear to God, it's like middle of the afternoon and you guys are just waking up. I don't understand it. But then again, part of that is the esports lifestyle, right?
It's a whole 2 hours.
Is it only I thought it was 3 hours.
From here, it's 2 hours.
Is it 3
No,
hours?
it's just two.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned a lot already, and we hope to learn a lot more with the questions that you asked over in the R Smash Brothers AMA subreddit thread. If you're not familiar with the format, every Monday we submit a new guest for Thursday to the R Smash Brothers subreddit. Mods they so graciously and diligently tend to a thread over there. You ask your questions, you vote on your favorites, and we pick the cream of the crop. And we ask them to our guests every Thursday night, and we're here to do that again, this time with the third place finisher at the HTC Throwdown. Silent Wolf, are you ready for the toughest questions?
I am indeed ready.
All right, excellent. Well, let's just get down to it. First question off the bat, the top voted one of the week. Frank the Flank asks, why Green Fox? Also, in all of Fox's versus all Falco's crew battle, which crew would win? The roster would be... You know what? Let's go with why Green Fox first. This one is a very deep question.
Yeah, very deep. Let me think about this, Frank. Well, I think that's a pretty simple question. It's just, I feel like everybody chooses their color just because they think it looks the best. And, like, I really appreciate how it's, like, such... like random colors on Green Fox that seem to like work so well together for some reason, like the green jacket, the red boots, the yellow scarf.
I can tell you put some thought into this.
Yeah. That's not why I chose the color, but I like after playing the Fox for so long, you realize things. Like I also noticed that all the colors on the Green Fox matched like all the colors on my black GameCube controller and the buttons. I thought that was kind of cool. But that's not like a reason why I chose the Fox. I'm like,
That's next level right there. That's meta analysis of character choice.
well, after you play the game for like 12 years or whatever, you notice things like that.
You notice a few things here and there, I guess, a few details.
Just a couple.
Yeah, just a
Absolutely.
couple.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we now know why Green Fox. The next part of the question is also in an all Foxes versus all Falcos crew battle, which crew would win? The roster would be based on character color. So it would be Westballs, Mango, Peepee, and Zoo versus you, Armada, Leffen, and Hacks. That's a matchup I would pay money to see. I have to say.
Question. It sounds pretty even to me. The thing is, like, one thing I think it's a pretty arbitrary question that it wouldn't just be like the best players of each character, but the best players of each color. So it's kind of like, I feel like it might be kind of random and meaningless to a lot of those players to the point where their motivation would be waning and the result would just depend on who would actually care. Another thing is who would be playing consistently, because it's all Spacies players and it's pretty common for a Space Animal man to be playing inconsistently. And with that many on the table, it's like, who knows what could happen.
Now, I'm already noticing just from your first two answers to what are, I mean, obviously some popular questions, but perhaps some arbitrary ones, is that you're sort of a detail oriented person. Is that something that reflects in your play?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of how you look at your character, for example, especially when you're training?
In terms of detail. Yeah, I mean, even just everything takes detail. Like, even recognizing, like, when to continue a combo, when to let them land, when they're going to hit a platform, stuff like that. It takes a lot of just really noticing all the details to be consistent at everything in your game, basically.
Now, are those decisions that you make on the fly? Is it something that you've got programmed, or are you more of a going by your gut player, or a player that has to really sit down and plan things out beforehand?
Little bit of both. Like I play by my gut, but it definitely makes it easier to play by my gut if I already know what I'm looking for, basically.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, let's put your detail-oriented mind to work a little bit more with our next question. Pokemon 64ism asks, in the past couple of years, we've seen top foxes push the character to its limit. What are some ways that Fox can be optimized even further?
Not good enough yet. Need to level
Yeah,
up.
apparently he's not a...
Oh, he's getting near the pinnacle of where humans are going to be able to take him, I feel like. But to name like a few techniques that people haven't completely delved into or at least used consistently in tournament, like Foxes could start wave shining out his shield a lot more, which is really useful, but definitely hard to pull off in tournament consistently. Another thing, sort of similar, another variation of dash jump cancel shine is doing dash jump cancel shines out of your initial dash dance to give you like a quick alternative if you're like in close quarters with somebody without that much risk, assuming you could do it consistently. Other than like techniques like that, not too much in terms of tech like that, but finding answers to the development of other characters in the metagame will always be changing because I still feel like there's much to be tapped into in terms of the top tier characters, and Foxes are going to have to step it up and adapt to all that stuff as it changes.
Excellent. Now, speaking of improvement, it has to be said that there's clearly something about your play that you've unlocked over the past 3 tournaments. I took a look at your results, and you were in the 17th to 24th range at EVO, and then you were 9th through 12th at Paragon LA, and then 3rd at HTC Throwdown. We talked about optimizing characters, that sort of thing. Is there something about your own play that you've discovered, that you've unearthed over the course of those tournaments that's precipitated such an insane rise in results?
No, I think just taking those 3 tournaments into consideration, I think the difference between those and HTC was I didn't have to fight an Ice Climbers Pro in losers bracket.
You really think it's that simple? I mean, you beat Mewtwo King, man. I mean, I don't know if you've paid attention, but he's pretty good.
I don't think there was any difference over the course of those tournaments that enabled me to do so. Like I've beaten Jason in a tournament before. It was just how well I do at a tournament really depends on just how I'm feeling in the moment. And if I beat somebody good early on in the tournament and I was playing really well, I usually use that to carry me through the rest of the tournament.
So it sounds like it's more of a mentality thing with you. Is that correct?
And that's something I'm still inconsistent with. And HTC, I just happen to have a good showing in that regard.
Now, we spoke a little bit before the cameras were rolling about how one of the weird things about HTC Throwdown is that you didn't practice as much. Is that just something about you? I mean, I remember when I was at school, for example, I would study up until the day before the test, or the day before the test, and then I would actually relax, and that would actually help me do better. What is it about your preparation for HTC that made you do better?
I don't necessarily think it's correlated with the lack of practice, but like I mentioned earlier, I think it was really just because when I got to the tournament, I wasn't feeling confident at all. I felt like I was totally off my game. But when I actually got on the stage, I feel like that really gave me motivation, just knowing like everybody's watching me. And when I first beat Iwan Shroomed, like it gave me a lot of motivation, and I saw like, oh man, I'm actually playing really well. Like if I can continue to hold that mindset and play this well, I can make it really far in this tournament. So what I do in that situation is just think back and think about that mindset that I had during those matches when I played well, and just try and maintain that mindset throughout the tournament.
It would be nice if a lack of practice was the key to doing well. That'd be pretty easy for you, I think.
Yeah,
That would be nice.
Just show up and win.
Although I enjoy practicing sometimes.
You enjoy practicing. I believe that's an exclusive here on the Smashbros AMA.
That's the headline quote right there.
Yeah.
I enjoy practicing.
You enjoy practicing. What is it about practice that you enjoy so much?
Well, ever since the release of the 20XX Hack Pack, practicing by yourself has actually become a lot more fun because it's really effective for working on your punish game. Aside from possibly developing a few bad habits from fighting computers over and over, it really enables you to further your punish game just playing by yourself with any of the characters.
What are some of those bad habits you can develop?
Oh, when you're fighting a computer, you're pretty much just practicing doing combos. So you're just running in and starting combos. So then if you try and extrapolate that to when you're playing a human, you might just start running in a really stupid way and throwing out stupid hits, just trying to get a combo started because you're so conditioned to do that from your practice. That's why you need to find a good balance of practicing by yourself and with people.
Does Washington have a large Smash community?
I would say so. It's definitely not as large as like SoCal or NorCal or Florida, but our tournaments get like 60 to 100 people within that range, so it's pretty good.
Excellent.
Pretty good size.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to compare yourself, obviously, to 3 of the biggest regions in Smash Brothers. But
yeah, most regions don't really compare in that regard.
but it's good to hear that you've at least got some obviously the work that you're doing with people in your local area is paying off. Now I have to ask, because I've always been curious about this, how much of an individual's performance is predicated on the availability of talented practice partners? I mean, like you said, Washington isn't huge, but you finished 3rd of the HTC Throwdown. You're clearly being challenged and pushed.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it definitely would help you immensely to live in a region like SoCal where you have all of these top players at your disposal, but it's definitely not by any means impossible to improve by yourself. It just makes it harder because you don't have all those good players to just punish all your bad habits over and over. You don't have all those matchups of good players, good characters to fight. You just have to kind of watch videos, get a feel for it, even like take notes if you're getting really serious about it, and just put in all that additional work necessary.
Well, speaking of having people nearby, people that are important to your development, we get to our next question. Taco Joe asks, is the story about you stealing your friend's Smashboard's name true?
The hard questions come out.
This is the one.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's actually true.
Oh,
when
dear.
I first signed up for Smashboards, which was the first internet forum I'd been exposed to, I didn't want to make like what I thought was a nerdy like code name for myself in middle school. So obviously I didn't want to put my real name, so I just chose a character that I played at the time, and I chose Falco. So my tag was just Falco at the time, Falco with a K instead of a C because it was taken. And then my account ended up getting banned from my friend in middle school posting some stuff on there. And then I just took it upon myself to take my friend's account, which I made for him. So I knew the password and stuff. I asked him about it, and I just kind of used that. Didn't think it would be a big deal, and then that's just how I became Silent Wolf.
You do what you got to do. You know what?
Betray your friends, steal their passwords.
I would have done the same thing in his position.
You would.
It kind of fit too, because like I'm generally a pretty quiet person, and wolves are one of my favorite animals. So I was like, hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
Are wolves a quiet animal?
This one is.
Sometimes I'm sure they're pretty quiet. Probably not silent, but
They're not
I
always
didn't
just
make the name.
howling.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't make the name, Ian. Come on.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on the
Fair
guy.
point. It's not
he
your
just
name.
stole it, okay? Relax.
Well, I'm sure, I hope at least that you two have forgiven your past. And,
Yeah, we're still best friends. Years later.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, moving from one weird mammal name to another, we're talking about Drugged Fox in our next question. From the real Mr. Willis, what was playing Drugged Fox like? Do you think you figured him out, or did you just stick to your game plan and win?
Oh, well, I actually pulled him aside when I got to the tournament and managed to play a good 10 or so friendlies with him. And during those friendlies, he mostly played Cheek. His tech chasing, basically what makes him popular, what he does, how he combos you, it was almost flawless in friendlies. So I was pretty intimidated when I heard I had to play him. But I also know that he has sort of a problem with nerves in tournament, so I was thinking maybe he'll be less consistent than he was in friendlies. And then in our first set in the winner's bracket, I did realize he was messing stuff up, so I would just try and tech in place, let him mess up, and then punish him for it. Because not only will you get a punish for that, but if you need to think about what's going on inside your opponent's mind, and I knew it would be getting to him if he was messing up and getting punished for something that he's usually consistent with, so I tried to use that to my advantage.
It's
now,
sorry.
Now in the second set, the one that I think everybody probably watched, where there was like spaghetti everywhere in that last game. He was much more consistent in his tech chasing, so I decided to take him to Final Destination in the last game, knowing that he would switch to Marth. And then we were both playing pretty sloppy, but like once I got near the end, we were both choking so hard. But as soon as I realized that he was choking too, it made me feel a little bit more comfortable, and I think that gave me like the confidence I needed to win.
Just drenched in spaghetti.
So much spaghetti.
Covered in spaghetti.
Too much spaghetti.
Embarrassing.
It's interesting then that you two played each other so much before the tournament, and then you both managed to perform virtually equally. For all intents and purposes, you of course nudged him out.
Weird thing going on between us. Like we had talked about this situation in friendlies where you intentionally roll to get up from the ledge at over 100% because what most people do is accidentally mess up a ledge dash and either stand up or get up attack, and people will charge an attack and punish it. So we were talking about baiting people into throwing out an attack there while getting onto the ledge. So each time that situation came up in our sets, I wasn't sure if he was like trying to trick me or like do the double negative with it or what. So every time that came up, it was kind of weird. We had like our own little metagame thing going on there.
Yeah, it sort of seemed like as much as, these friendlies, it's almost like you guys were both trying to figure each other out.
Of course, there's always that too.
I mean, it's maybe a ridiculous question, but do you feel like maybe those friendlies, those intense friendlies, actually contributed to your performance for the rest of the tournament?
Yeah, I would say so. Because Sheik isn't a character that I normally get practice versus because we don't have very many Sheiks in Washington. So in general, it's always a great idea to go out and fight somebody really good at a tournament versus a character you're not generally exposed to, just to get used to that character before the bracket. And I think that did actually help me a lot since I fought like 3 Sheiks, 4 total sets versus Sheik at that tournament.
What you're describing does not, as I would put it, sound like a friendly. It sounds like you guys had like a full-on scrimmage before the HTC Throwdown.
I mean, they're friendly, but there's always what's going on behind the scenes. You're getting the intel on your opponents, doing what's best for you to excel in the tournament, all that.
Hey, if you're willing to steal your friend's name, you're willing to get intel however you have to. You'll go the extra mile.
All right, so I mean, then the question has to be asked, if I may play devil's advocate. Are people going to play friendlies with you in the future? Because it sounds like you've been exposed.
This isn't just me. I'm not just like plotting on all of the other top players.
Sure.
This is common knowledge among top players that it's good to go out and money match people before the bracket, especially matchups that you don't generally get practice with, just so you're best prepared for what could happen in the bracket.
Does anyone else at the tournament, are there any pros that have sort of decided not to play friendlies against other pros for fear of that? Is there anybody who's wise to the game?
Absolutely. Dr. PP is probably the only one I can think of. He's always really reluctant to play friendlies.
Oh,
for that reason.
Based on what the story you just told us, that makes a lot of sense.
The PPMD secrets must stay secret.
Absolutely. That's why he's hiding in South Carolina with all of his data.
Did he just walk up to you and hide a secret?
He did. Wait,
see what I
what?
did there?
No, I didn't.
Move on.
Anyway, moving on to our next question. Regular contributor to the show, Lumpy Loom, asks you, Silent Wolf, neutral isn't oh my lord, neutral isn't explained as clear and as much as tech because it is less tangible and harder to explain. So obviously talking about how neutral game is a little more nebulous. What would you say are some of the quote-unquote rules, excluding obvious things like ending lag on moves, of neutral game that you make decisions based upon?
Well, I feel like, neutral game is definitely difficult to explain and probably the most tricky part of this game to fully be consistent at. I feel like the rules change depending on the matchup, obviously, but also with the level of skill of the player that you're playing against. In general, you need to look for particular moves that character is likely to throw out in certain situations, and that comes with just practice and watching videos, but that can vary depending on the skill level of the player you're playing against. So it really takes a lot of practice to get a hold on like being consistent versus players of all skill levels, especially top level players, because they really know what to look for.
Now Scar actually made the comment when you were playing Mewtwo King. because Mewtwo King sort of popped off when he took a game off of you, that everyone is good. Is that something that you see reflected? And I think based on your performance at the HTC Throwdown, you're certainly evidence to support that claim.
Yeah, I feel like more and more people are popping off nowadays. It's just like become kind of a thing. So I wasn't too surprised when I saw him do it or anything.
I mean, but you have to say you've been playing the game for 12 years. You know who Mewtwo King is. Did it feel good, pretty good, to know that one of the greatest players of all time is excited to take a game off of you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like crap because I just lost the game. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, that probably overrode the excitement a little bit. The fact that you just lost.
I wasn't like, yes, he just beat me and popped off against me. It's like, no, I know I can beat this guy. I want to beat him. Sit back down, Mewtwo King.
Well, it sounds at least like your mentality is very momentum based. How do you, as a player, overcome when the odds are stacked against you and maybe your motivation feels like it's waning a little bit?
I guess it depends on the situation because, well, when the odds are stacked against me, like let's say it depends on the situation. If I'm really far behind in a match, I try and think back to a time where I made such a comeback and the exact mindset that I had while doing so, and it makes me confident that I can do it, and then I just go from there. It makes me play better.
So maybe it's just about finding your foothold, finding something that makes you confident, and then just building from that is what it sounds like.
Yeah, but like I said, it can vary depending on the situation. Like there's a lot of different little mental battles you have to go through when playing your opponents.
Yeah, well, it has to be said that one of the major features of, for example, Hungrybox's career is that he can be a very emotional player, and then in stark contrast to Mewtwo King, who very much like tries to play like a robot and tries to just take all emotion out of it. What to what degree does emotion play a part in a game this with this fine a margin, when the stakes are this high and when the error for margin, or with the margin for error, is that thin? How much does your mindset affect your ability to perform when compared to, say, your mechanics or your preparation?
Ooh, I would probably weigh my mindset above all else, honestly, because I feel like there are days when I've practiced for a tournament, I have the tech skill that I need, but I'm just not feeling it for some reason. And if I don't really have that strong desire to beat my opponent, then it makes it harder to focus. And if I can't focus on my opponent, it makes it really hard to pull out the moves I need to do stuff in really precise situations and stuff like that. And if I'm not really motivated, and let's say I'm playing somebody that's a little bit worse than me that has something to prove, but I don't really gain anything by beating them, sometimes it can be hard to find the motivation to beat somebody like that too. And you really can't let your emotions get the best of you if it's in any negative way, like you messing up your tech skill. Then you just get emotionally wrecked, you get punished for it, and then it's just kind of snowballs from there. So there's a lot of little emotional battles you have to deal with depending on the context.
Sure. So it sounds like at the very least it's maybe perhaps you rise to the occasion. It's easier for you to play against more challenging players because that this is your moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. I know that my college basketball team has a tendency to play poorly against bad teams, and not too pleased with that fact. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's sports, right? That's how this works.
You're going to move on to the next question. That's all we can do. Right? Yeah.
Old ass dude Logan asks. Can't believe I just said that on the air.
Names.
Old ass dude Logan asks, I've seen you play Wolf in Project M. What is your opinion on him if Twitch allows this question?
Right, well, as long as Twitch allows it.
We
I think
allow
Wolf is... It might be kind of silly to say that he's one of the best in the game because I feel like there's so much untapped potential in that game, and when devising a tier list or ranking of the characters, you really need to take each character's matchups into consideration, and there's so much unexplored. But at the very least, I can say that Wolf is a very solid character, and he reminds me a lot of Falco in Melee. A really strong offense, but just crumbles when he gets hit, really.
It seems like a lot of you players tend to prefer, for example, Fox, Falco. They're both characters that, while they can do a lot of damage and they can certainly put out a lot of punishment, there's sort of a fine line between punishing and being punished. How do you does that still weigh on you? Just that once again that margin for error being so thin with such a frail character.
At times, like if I'm playing poorly, it really, really shows because I just get hit a lot more often, and if Fox gets hit, he gets wrecked a lot harder than most characters. But if I'm playing well, then it's just like, oh my god, it's just Fox. He's just the best character. He's doing all this stuff, and that's the Fox that everyone seems to see.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that people talk about 20XX, about Fox eventually taking over the game. Let's talk about that for just a second. Is 20XX? It's a joke. It's certainly a tongue-in-cheek thing. Is Fox so good that 20XX could one day become a reality?
No, absolutely not. There's characters that I believe go even with Fox at the highest level. Among them are Marth, Sheik, and probably Falco. Falco's really even with Fox too. So it's definitely not going to come down to all Foxes or anything. That's for sure. It's not anywhere near that. Especially with how inconsistent most Fox players are. Like players like me, SFAT, Lucky, around that skill level, we all have really high peaks, but we're still inconsistent to the point where we'll sometimes get like 17th at a big tournament. So there's always going to be that.
Was that a shout out to Mango?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that about Mango yet. That was just one tournament out of many.
Sure, yeah.
He's done okay besides that.
He certainly has a good
no
resume.
shots at Mango.
Yeah.
I love Mango.
So then the question has to be asked, what makes people gravitate towards Fox? Is it just easier to perhaps play at a higher level with that character? Is there just a lot more work that goes in? What is the secret to that foxy, speedy character?
My guess would be that it's just Fox is by far the most fun character to practice by yourself. And practicing by yourself, if done right, can go a very long way. And I feel like Fox players who practice by themselves often realize that, and it just keeps them going. Whereas if you play Jigglypuff or something, like, there's not really much you can practice by yourself. Like a few movement things, practicing like down air into stuff because the timing is tricky, but other than that, there's not much there. And also, there's so much room for expressing yourself as a Fox player because there's so many different things you can do with the character. You can totally see the player's personality while they play, like, without anybody telling you. You can watch a match of Westballs playing Falco and be like, oh, that's Westball's Falco, or watch SFAT's Fox and be like, oh, that's SFAT's Fox because of their style, and you're used to it.
For those of us,
I think that might be something.
For those of us who have a harder time discerning the difference between that play, can you just maybe explain, like, give us an example of a difference between Westball's Falco and Mango's Falco?
Well, there's certain things that Westballs goes for, like the characteristic Westball's double shine pressure, where he does a shine, jumps, does a shine just off the ground, and wave dashes down. He always uses the same, like, light reverse back air into up tilt and combos. He always opts to extend combos by doing down airs onto platforms, whereas he could knock them off and set up an edge guard. Mango, I don't really know how to describe Mango's style. He plays a really unorthodox style, unlike any Falco.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe, I mean, we've all seen the famous Mango combos. It sounds like Westballs almost likes to play with his food a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes I feel that way.
Well, you can't blame him. I mean, Falco is a pretty fun character. Maybe not as fun as Fox, obviously, considering the tournament results, but it's interesting to hear that difference, because I think to a lot of people, the action is happening so fast that it's hard necessarily to pick out what individually is happening in that string of combos when compared to, for example, a game like, I don't know, like League of Legends, for example, where you literally pick a different hero every single time. It's a completely different thing. So it's fascinating, to say the least, to hear how the people different. So on that note, how does your Fox, for example, differ from, let's say, the Fox of Armada, for example?
Ooh. Well, one thing, just like a shot at myself. If you saw Armada Fox playing, you would know from how consistent he is with his up air combos. And I generally do a lot of weird, unorthodox things like offensive side Bs in the neutral game to overshoot people, dash dancing. I go for forward throw combos on Marth and Peach at certain percents. I do like a lot of quirky stuff. I do a lot of forward airs. A lot of Foxes don't use that move too much. Armada keeps it very standard, very consistent, but he really shows how technical he is in his punish game.
Interesting. So, I mean, you talked about consistency. Obviously, that's difficult, but that actually feeds into our next question nicely. Speaking of consistency, you've had some troubles in the past, but obviously you were able to pull something out at HTC Throwdown, and that leads Itzant to asks, what is it like playing against Mewtwo King?
Playing against Mewtwo King, it's I'm either really motivated or really demoralized, depending on how the set's going, really. Like, if I know I'm playing well, I'm really motivated because I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can beat Jason. I've either gotten close or I've beaten him before, depending on what time in my career we're talking about. Or if I know my game is off, I'll be like, oh, great, I have to play Mewtwo King. I'm just going to get destroyed. So it can really go either way with Mewtwo King.
That sounds
because you know
like
he's
the
so
opposite of
consistent. If you get touched,
Yeah.
you're going to get hit. So it really forces you to play careful. As long as you're able to do so, it's a good thing to play him.
Now, if he goes into more of his turtle game, does that affect how you feel about it? Like, how do you respond to that when he starts playing that way?
Well, he's usually not too bad about it. I know not to overextend. A lot of people say don't approach Mewtwo King near the ledge, but I don't necessarily strictly believe that. My theory is just don't mess up near the ledge versus Mewtwo King. You can be by the ledge. You can keep him there. You can punish certain things he does when he gets back. You just need to be very careful and not overextend. Like, because the ledge is still a bad position. He's just really good at playing it and turning it around, and you just got to know how to not let him do that.
Not messing up sounds like a good general strategy, actually. against
Yeah,
Mewtwo King.
general.
Just play great, and you'll be fine.
Exactly.
Don't get hit.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and you talk about mistakes. You talk about playing well. I mean, once again, that all goes back to the this idea of consistency. How do you, as a player, strive for more consistency? Is that something you can just practice, or is it something that develops over time?
Well, in terms of like technical skill, executing everything you need to, that definitely comes from practice. And sometimes it's so hard for players that they ask people for advice like, what can I do to get more consistent in my tech skill? And they don't believe the answer is just practice because it seems so far off, but you really just have to grind it out.
Yeah.
And like in terms of consistency in general, you really know how to deal with all of the little mental battles that will happen when you're playing your opponent in tournament, deal with the nerves, basically the whole mentality aspect of it. There's a lot that the game will throw at you that you have to get used to in that regard too.
So you said you've played for 12 years. Do you think you've now reached a point of consistency? I mean, we've seen a rise over the past 3 tournaments, but when does your Mewtwo King moment happen? When do you reach that level of Mewtwo King Armada? These people who play their characters so well.
It's kind of difficult to say because Smash isn't like the only thing I have going on for me. My interest wanes, but I still keep myself fairly interested at those times. So I feel like I would need to dedicate myself to the game for a long period of time, not play other games, not have to focus on school and stuff, and take like little breaks and stuff like that. And I would just build that consistency over time.
Well, I'm sure. I don't think that your fans would begrudge you that, but obviously obtaining that work-life, that work-life balance is certainly a challenge for all of us. Absolutely. Well, moving on to our next question, Rar Penguin, another one of my favorite usernames, asks, and this goes back to what you were talking about just a second ago, why don't you travel more? It feels like we never get to see you.
Yeah. I mean, I actually travel more than I used to. It's just now that there's so many tournaments going on throughout the year these days, like a lot of other players get to go to them and I don't because I'm usually busy with school or other stuff. It's either school or financial issues usually. And like I said, I feel like I do go to like a pretty good amount of stuff. It's just there's so many events and all these other players are going out to everything that Like the definition of going to a lot of events has really gone up a lot in the last few years.
School and financial issues also often compound one another. I find in life. It does tend to do that. One begets the other.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, spend money on a tournament where you may not earn your money back. Is that something that ever comes into mind?
Yeah, because since last January, I quit my job to live off of Smash, so like it's been pretty steady, but at the same time, it's not totally reliable like a regular job, so I don't want to just risk it going out to all these big tournaments, much less like skipping school to do so.
Yeah, well, people see the League of Legends teams and the big Counter-Strike teams, stuff like that. They forget the money is there, but it's not quite there to that degree in, for example, Smash Brothers and a lot of fighting games. The struggle's still real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that being said, what would have to happen in the Smash world for you to fully be able to commit and say, you know what, I'm going all in?
Well, number one, I would have to be out of school because I take school very seriously. Number two, I would probably need to have a sponsor that pays for my travel expenses. So as long as I had basically the time and the money, like, there's nothing really holding me back, honestly.
Where's TSM at?
Yeah.
We got a good player here. Come on.
Evil Genius's Silent Wolf, right?
Step up. Cloud9. What's going on? Tell Mango to get you the hookup. He's got that. Mango can get that going for you.
He knows some people in Cloud9.
Yeah,
I hear.
I've heard.
He does. I also know that Mango really wants to be the only player sponsored by Cloud9, though. And I wouldn't want to take that away from him.
Well, details.
He may or may not have the sway to dictate that. I can imagine. Well, let's hope that we see a CLG Silent Wolf announcement here in the future. It'd be great, obviously, especially after how well you did at HTC Throwdown to see you at more tournaments and see you ply your trade as well as you did.
Or Fnatic.
Did you get a little emotional about that
I
one?
did. I love Fnatic so much.
Don't we all?
Excuse me.
Well, this going back to your HTC Throwdown, obviously a very popular topic right now because it was such an important experience for you. And I apologize to our are we cycling through? Looks like for some reason we are cycling through questions right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you the questions off the slide. Silent Wolf, Yaranakunchain, I certainly did not pronounce that correctly, asks, how do you feel about your win over Mewtwo King at HTC Throwdown? You were smiling immediately after winning Game 5, but how much weight do you put on your win now? While you did outplay him throughout the set, it was clear that M2K wasn't in his PAX or Paragon form. So it sounds like they're congratulating you, but also calling you out just a little bit.
I mean, all I can say is we take those, man. Like, not everybody is consistent at every tournament. And, like, I don't think people are going to John for me for losing to certain players just because I'm having an off day. It's just the battle that everyone has to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like Mewtwo King was playing, like, total ass or anything, you know? So I wouldn't just, like, not count it or anything. I'll totally count that.
Well, and the match obviously meant something to him, especially based on the way that he reacted after taking a game off you.
Yeah. I could tell he wanted it. If he couldn't bring it out during that set, then that's just his fault as a player, I suppose. It's not like he was intentionally sandbagging me or anything.
Certainly not. And how much, I suppose, do you as a player put on the relative strength or weakness compared to their baseline of your opponents during a tournament? I mean, are you the sort of player that looks back after a tournament and says, I won, but, Hungry Box was playing really well, or, I look back at Mewtwo King and say, well, he, his mind wasn't really there and I was somehow sharper. Is that something that affects your psyche at all?
I wouldn't say it affects my psyche, but I definitely, understand those things. I don't just take it oh my god, I beat Mewtwo King, he must have been playing his best, and try to make the most out of it as I can. I really understand the situation and, see if somebody's playing bad. I don't think of me as, way better than them or anything. I take the match, as it truthfully is, and just basically stay real with myself, but I don't let it, affect my psyche in any way. Let's say I play Jason again, I wouldn't be thinking, oh man, it's Jason. I only beat him last time because he was playing bad. He's really gonna get me now. It's just like I know I can beat him, and then I just focus and try and do it again, which is the mindset that I had going into HTC playing him.
Yeah, keep it real, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Have realistic
Pretty
expectations. Yeah. No, and I mean, it sounds like with your mindset being such an important part of your game, that's something that you've really worked on is ironing out those idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest parts of the game, I feel like, and it's not something that's easily worked on like by yourself. You can't just sit in your room and sharpen your mindset as easily as you can practice your tech skill, you know? It's just something that comes from experience, especially like playing on the big stage in front of all those people. That's something you only get exposed to like a couple times a year, a few times a year, depending on who you are, what you go to.
So for those players who can't, as you said, hang out in their room and practice their mindset, just sit there thinking really hard about how to think, what's your advice for them to improve such a vital aspect of their gameplay?
Basically, just keep playing, enter tournaments. Think about if you felt like your mindset wasn't strong enough or like something. Hold on, let me start over. You need to think about what, like, let's say you played a tournament match and you felt like it was your mindset that was the reason that made you play bad. You need to think about what exactly about your mindset made you play bad and think about how you can fix that. And like I said, there's a lot of different things it could be. Even something as simple as like getting distracted from two people talking behind you while you're playing. It takes a lot of practice and experience to be able to just focus so hard on the match that you don't have to deal with hearing that and being distracted by that.
It sounds like it takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to sort of examine yourself.
And I think
much.
the first mental battle when you start entering tournaments is the nerves. A lot of people ask me, like, how do I deal with the tournament nerves? Like, I just get so nervous in tournament and mess up. And that's something even the pro players face sometimes today. But most of them are able to get over it just from playing in that setting for a long period of time, just getting that experience in that situation.
Well, you said you gave the dreaded advice that it takes time. Nobody likes to hear that.
I have to ask.
No easy way out. Some people just get it. But
Yeah.
up to others, like I always thought I would be super nervous playing on a big stage back before I had ever played on one, but I noticed that it's a lot less distracting when it's a big crowd than when it's a small crowd and you hear people talking and you can pick out conversations. When it's a big crowd, it's just white noise. You can't hear anything. You can just focus on the game.
Do the nerves ever help you? Keep you focused, though?
What was that?
Do the nerves ever help you, like keep you more focused, get you on your game?
Yeah, because I feel like I don't know if it's the nerves, I would say. It's just being in that setting really motivates me. Whereas if I'm playing in my room, it's like I'm just in my room. I'm not really super motivated. And I can't bring out that focus on command if I'm not in a serious setting. But being able to turn those nerves into that focus is a really important asset of gameplay, I feel like. At least for me.
That's interesting.
That's like what I learned how to do with it.
Well, I mean, I suppose there are ways you could technically make yourself nervous at home. You could put a spider on your arm, or
I don't think that would make me play better in any universe.
or any other universe for that matter.
The ultimate test of Smash Brothers, playing with spiders on your arms.
That's the future. That's 20XY. That's it's a different time. Anyway, another question from Yaranakun-chane. That's what I've landed on is the pronunciation for this. But either way, the questions are great. Who was your toughest opponent at HTC Throwdown? Mewtwo King, Leffen, or Hungrybox?
Oh, easily Leffen. I don't think I've ever been beaten by somebody as bad as I'd been beaten by Leffen at HTC, honestly. And I don't consider myself particularly bad at Fox Dittos. Like, do you Fox with it? I beat a lot of the top Foxes and came close to beating Hacks. It was just his movement was much better than mine in the neutral game, and he was much more familiar with what to look for in the neutral game than I was. So he got many more openings, and he also has a much stronger punish game. So when he did get those openings, he really hit me where it hurt.
That's interesting. So it sounds like He's such a he did look very crisp at the HTC Throwdown. I'll say
yeah.
that he looked a lot less mentally affected and far more incisive.
Yeah, that was basically that tournament was probably his way of saying like, look, like I won like 5 out of the 7 last nationals, and those last 2 that I lost was because like honestly, you kind of lose motivation when you've already proven yourself that much, and he probably stopped practicing because he already had felt that he proved himself. But once everybody started talking down on him after he lost like 1 or 2 tournaments, he really had to show everybody. I feel like that's what it was.
It's just unfortunate that one of those tournaments where he was down was Evo. That's a little unfortunate.
Everybody chokes at Evo, though.
What is it about Evo then that that's maybe the dumbest question I'll ask on this show? What's so special about Evo?
Is Evo a big deal?
Do people care about that tournament?
I've heard about it. Have you ever seen it? Did you watch
it? I've been there.
Wow,
I was very lucky to have been there. Let's actually, if you don't mind talking about that for a second. What was it that happened to you at Evo that caused that to be one of your lower placements? Was it just nerves? Did you run into an ice climber? I mean, what happened there?
Ran into an ice climber. Basically, I was playing pretty well against Armada, honestly. I think I came closer to beating him than anyone at the tournament. But I played Shootout, that's why I lost to Shootout. I played him like right after Armada. I still probably should have taken more time to cool down, thought about my next match a little bit, but I kind of jumped into it, and then the set started off pretty sloppy, and then once I got wobbled, it was just really hard to gain any momentum back, because I was already messing up a lot of tech skill, couldn't get my footing, and when you're just frozen there in a wobble combo, it's really hard to get momentum, so I just couldn't find my footing and ended up losing that set pretty badly.
What does it do to your mental state to sit there and get infinitely bashed with hammers by cute little Eskimos?
As soon as it happens, you pretty much just need to accept it. Start thinking about what you're going to do to avoid it the next stock.
It's that inevitable.
Don't let it get to you.
Yeah.
It's annoying. It's demoralizing at times. You just need to have the right mindset. You need to go into that set expecting to get wobbled, and don't be like, oh no, I got wobbled, it's happening. What do I do?
It's happening.
just keep it cool.
Drop the controller, honestly. Walk away.
Just put it down and
just
walk.
Wait.
The ultimate
It'll be over soon.
In terms of regaining your motivation, 50 Cent asks, what music, if any, do you listen to get hype?
Get hype as if I'm playing in tournament. Because usually I don't listen to music when I'm playing in tournament, because I realize once I don't play with sound that I actually depend on a lot of sound cues when I play. So for that reason, I don't listen to music in tournament. But if I'm just chilling at home practicing tech skill, I'll just throw on some hip hop beats, some trip hop beats, just a lot of instrumental stuff I've been listening to lately.
Nice. Any recommendations? You can name an artist.
We'll allow it.
I like Durazo, Metal 4. I don't know. those are probably my top 2 right now.
The official Silent Wolf Smash Brothers playlist.
Now on Spotify.
You got it here.
Excellent. Well, you're living up there in Washington. Not a ton of super high-level smashers out there, but who is the most underrated player in the Northwest region? K-Beats is dying to know.
Underrated player. I suppose Bladewise, because he's almost as good as me, but it seems like next to nobody has heard of him, because he's in the same situation as me where he travels about as much as me. But he's probably the most underrated player right now.
I liked his play at TwitchCon, actually. He looked really solid there.
He sure did. Yeah.
Oh,
not
SmashCon?
TwitchCon, that's at SmashCon.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
Yeah. That was one of the few tournaments he went to that I wasn't able to make it out to.
Do you speak with him regularly? Do you know what changed in his playstyle or his maybe even his mentality to suddenly elevate him to a new level?
I wouldn't say he's had any sudden improvements, but he's been steadily improving since I've known him. He's been one of my best friends for the last 7 years or so. We've pretty much been rivals ever since then. He's kind of what keeps me going in my own region. If it weren't for him at all the local tournaments, it would just be super easy for me. He's there to kind of keep me in check. make sure I'm like on my game, because if I'm not, he'll beat me at any tournament.
Well, it's too late to steal his name, so don't try.
No, I have my own name now.
Certainly making a
I'll
name
stick to
for
this
yourself.
one.
Yep. Well, we got time for about one more question before we wrap up here. Crescentium asks, you looked pretty down when you lost to Leffen at HTC Throwdown, but you managed to bounce back against Mewtwo King and even managed to win. My question is, what's your secret for keeping your composure? Any tips and tricks for the more emotional / easily flustered players out there?
Ooh. Yeah, I was actually really worried about that. Like, I kind of felt embarrassed after I played Leffen because I'd gotten beaten so bad, and I was going in there with expectations of possibly winning. So I was kind of a wreck. And then as soon as they called me to play Jason, Mewtwo King, I was like, oh my god, I'm not ready for this. But then somehow, like, I knew I could beat him because I'd beaten him one of the last times I played him. So I just used that motivation to really just focus on beating him and drown out any previous emotions I had about Leffen, basically.
So what are your tips for amateur players or people who are trying to improve their mindset to keep them from becoming so easily flustered?
It becomes easier with more experience when you know of all the stupid, janky stuff that'll happen to you. And you go into matches with expectations that this kind of stuff might happen to you, and you don't get as thrown off by it or flustered. And also, as you're more experienced, you'll have more moments where you can think back to times where you played, where you had a really strong mindset and try to emulate that same mindset. Or just, yeah, basically that. Because that's usually what I do, but I feel like you can't just go to your first tournament and have that opportunity. It just comes with experience as you've kind of experienced it. Like, I didn't truly know how to focus in tournament for a very long time, but once I did, I always tried to think back to when I had that mindset and just emulate that.
Well, excellent advice from a guy who, clearly is on top of his game when it comes to mindset in a game that requires nerves of steel. Silent Wolf, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any shout outs, anything you want to say before we take off for the night?
Anything
At all.
Anything? All right, I'll give some shout outs. Shout outs to my girlfriend Danny, my homies back home in the Tuck, Taryn, Ben, Andy, Evan. Shout outs to Blake. Shout outs to Toph and Vish. And shout outs to my mom for always supporting me and letting me go to random people's houses for Smashbros.
Well, let's your lips to other mothers' ears. Let's hope that there's more opportunities for young players to go to strangers' houses and play more
definitely.
Smash.
I would recommend it.
Hey, you got me this far.
Yeah, absolutely. Look where you could be if
Exactly.
you go over to strangers' houses and play their video games. Well, Silent Wolf, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it was a lot of fun for us. I hope you had some fun too.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be back next Thursday with yet another Smasher, another installment of the R Smash Brothers live AMA series. We'll have your guest on the R Smash Brothers subreddit on Monday. Be sure to check that out and ask your questions and pick your favorites. And it's an integral part of the process. If you like the show, please subscribe to us on YouTube. It helps us out quite a bit. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. And you know what? Where's it? It's over there.
Right here.
Hit that follow button if you're watching on Twitch. Just hit real quick. It takes literally half a second.
Or else.
I literally used literally the proper way, and I'm really happy about that.
There will be repercussions if you don't.
And Jared will come to your house and play your video games.
There'll be trouble. Yeah.
Thanks once again so much for joining us. Silent Wolf, it's great to have you on the show. For everybody that watched at home, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.